Welcome to Nadir Audio. In about a week on December 31st, it will have been 4 years since I posted the first video to this channel, which is kind of hard to believe. But in all that time, I've never done a state of the stereo, and I figured 2023 is as good a year as any, so let's get started. So we recently painted the interior of our house, and I figured this was my chance to paint my music room a more interesting color, so I picked a shade of orange that I really like, and I do think it livens things up a bit in here. But I did have to take all of the equipment out while the painters were doing their thing, and that was a lot of work, taking it all out and then setting it up again. But I put things back pretty much where they were before with a few tweaks, which we'll talk about. So the main stereo is pretty much where we left off, so we'll come back to the main stereo a little later in the video. First I want to talk about my audio desk over here. So this is where I record music from my other channel, and it's also where I do headphone listening and various other things. And I decided to push this desk much closer to the wall just so it doesn't stick out into the listening area as much. So I've got a thinner desk and I'm using a few cubes. And the drawback with that is just that I can't fit as much equipment. So we've kind of stripped it down to the basics here. So I just have my audio interface, which I use for recording on the other channel. And then for listening at the moment, we just have a Shitmodi DAC, and then we're still using our Emotiva A100 amplifier. And unfortunately, this is a fairly large amplifier, so it takes up a lot of the desk space, but I really don't have anywhere else to put it. I can maybe stuff it into one of these cubes, but then it might not be ventilated well enough, and also I like having the volume knob right there while I'm working on the computer. So for now, I'm just going to leave that and just let it take up some desk space. And then let's see, in the corner we have storing a few things, and then we have the couch that I sit on when I'm listening to music. And so we've got a really nice oil painting over here that I inherited recently from my uncle. And I did actually pick up a vintage Napa Valley cassette case last year, and I've got some of my cassettes up on the wall now, which makes them much easier to access. Now I still have a few shoe boxes full of cassettes, so I wasn't able to fit everything in here. But I think if I just get one more of these 100 cassette crates, that should be enough to get most of my cassettes more accessible, which means I'll use them more. I did want to mention one other thing over here, and that is that I've done a little bit of sound treatment in this room, not much, but by far the most effective is just putting these foam pads behind where my ears are when I'm listening to music. And the reason I do that is because this room is fairly small. It's about 12 by 14. And so I really just don't have room in here to have the couch with air and space behind it, which is ideally what you'd want from an acoustic point of view. But if you can't basically push your chair or couch to a point where there's some air behind it, it is really important to put some kind of sound absorbing material behind your listening area so that you're not hearing the reflections off the wall. And I have to say, it's not a subtle change. It's much better with this here, so it really has to be there. So if we pan over to the other side of the room, you can see that I'm using a couple of closets as extra space to store things. And the first one, you can see I'm just keeping my guitars and basses, practice amps, and other music equipment from my other channel. But the second one is where I have staged equipment for this channel. So speakers that I'm not using, other equipment. So of course we have the LS50s, which are a permanent fixture here. They're one of my reference speakers. So they're not in the main system at the moment, but they'll definitely be going in and out, and we're definitely going to keep those around for the long haul. I also have some vintage equipment in here. There's my parents' Fisher 150 integrated system. That still works. I did make a video about that a couple of years ago if you want to check it out. I don't use it on a daily basis, but it's still pretty cool. Okay, so I did add a new TV to the main system this year. This is just an inexpensive 42-inch Samsung TV that had pretty good reviews online. So the TV we had in here before was over 15 years old, getting a little long in the tooth, but I wanted something that was a little bigger and would more easily hang on the wall. So I do occasionally watch movies in here, which is nice to be able to do, but I also use this as a control interface for the Apple TV. So I mostly listen to CD and vinyl, but there are some files that I can't get on physical formats, and so those I will stream to my Apple TV, which is convenient. So looking at the rest of the system, I still am using my U-Turn Orbit turntable. So we're still using the Ortofon 2M red cartridge. I have replaced the stylus once and the belts several times, so You can see my previous video on this turntable. I think it's a great turntable, especially for the price. One thing I didn't mention in that previous video is that you do go through a lot of belts if you use it a lot, and the belts are not inexpensive. So they used to be $5 a piece from the U-turn site, and they're now $7 a piece, and it's good to stock up on those because you do go through those fairly quickly. But still really happy with the turntable. Probably not going to upgrade that in 2024, but you never know. So moving along, we have our Ryzong A10 tube amp. So I've also done a couple of videos on this, and I'll be doing more videos in the coming year, including a tube rolling video. I have been doing that. It's a long time coming, but probably in late 2024 we'll have a tube rolling video for this guy. But I do use him as one of my main amplifiers. So the general idea is I like to have a tube setup and a solid state setup in the same main system and be able to switch between the two. So when I'm in the mood for tubes, I can listen to the tube amp, and when I'm in the mood for solid state, I can listen to the solid state stuff. So we'll go over that in a minute. So on this top shelf here, we do have one other turntable. This is my vintage Marantz 6350Q. So this thing, it works, but there's a couple of features that are not working at the moment, so we need to do some service. I also have an older Stanton 680 cartridge on this, which probably needs to be upgraded, so we may give this some love in 2024, maybe late in the year. Otherwise, I'm really happy with the Orbit, so I don't really need the second turntable, but I would like to get this as a backup that's fully functional at some point. So if we move down a shelf, over here on the left, I'm still using my Project Phonobox DC as my phono amp. We will be trying out a couple other inexpensive phono amps in 2024, so stay tuned for that. But for now, I do really like this one. And if we move over a bit, so here we have our solid state setup. So I have a Schiit Saga preamp, which I really like, and then a Vidar 1 power amp. And then all of the digital sources are going through my Geshelli Labs J2 DAC, which is my favorite of the sub $300 DACs that I've tried out. We will be trying out a DAC in a higher price bracket in 2024, so stay tuned for that. But for now, I really like the J2. I think it's a great DAC, especially for the price. So down here, we do have an older VCR that I use. I used to use it as a way to record analog off of the radio, but I have a fully working cassette deck now, which we'll go over, so I don't use it so much for that. It's mostly just to be able to watch old movies that I still have on VHS. So we have that in the system. It doesn't get a lot of use. And then if we move over, we have my Mitsubishi DAR20. This is an integrated amplifier, but at the moment we're really just using it for the tuner. It has an excellent tuner built in. I do want to try out some other vintage dedicated tuners, so we may get one of those in 2024, but at some point we'll definitely be trying out some others, because for this guy we're really just using a small portion of what he's capable of, but it is a really great tuner, so I think it's probably going to stick around for a while. If we move over to our last shelf here, so we have, of course, my Oppo Blu-ray player, which I use to watch Blu-rays, and I occasionally use it. I have a small collection of SACDs, and it's convenient to be able to play those through this. And then we have my Apple TV sitting on top of that. That's mainly what we use for streaming things that are not on physical formats. Below that, we have my Rotel CD11 Tribute. I love this CD player. I use it quite a bit, and I do have a dedicated review I did in 2023, so I'll include a link in the description below to that. And then we have my Nakamichi 480 cassette deck. We also did a video on this in 2023, so you can check that out. But I really like this tape deck. It's very simple, not a lot of features, but it sounds great and it's easy to use. And then lastly in the main system, right now we've got a pair of Klipsch RP600M 2s. So I've been wanting these for a long time, and a couple months ago when they started to go on sale, I picked up a pair. And so these are currently under review. We'll have a full review of on these coming in January, so stay tuned for that. But spoiler alert, so far I really do like these speakers, especially with a tube amp. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more in that future video. But yeah, so it's just coming up on 4 years. Again, it's hard to believe it's been that long. We've done 32 videos, including this one, so we're averaging about 8 videos a year. Now I'm going to try to up that a little bit in 2024, but you know, I do have a full-time day job and some other hobbies, so we'll at least get you 8 videos in the coming year. So in the meantime, thanks so much for watching. Have a great holidays, and I'll catch you all in the next video.